Welcome back. We are in Khan Academy in Algebra 1 in the unit Quadratics Multiplying and Factoring. And so we are up to perfect squares, and we're going to factor this perfect square trinomial completely. The title gives away that it's a perfect square, but I just want to point out that what we're going to do is take these steps. We still don't know the quadratic formula. If we did, we could solve any quadratic equation, or we could factor any quadratic using the quadratic formula. But we are going to take these steps because we haven't gotten there yet. So first thing we should look for is factoring out any greatest common factor. So in this case, x is a factor of the first two terms but not the last one, so we can't factor any x's out. And we look at the coefficients now. 8, 112, and 392. Those are all even, so I can for sure divide them all by 2. They may be, let's see, they're divisible by, are they divisible by 4? Well, 8 is, certainly. Every 100 is made of 25 4s, so it doesn't matter how many hundreds there are, those will be divisible by 4. So we look at the last two digits and we see 12. 12 is divisible by 4. We look at the last two digits and 92. 92 is divisible by 4 because it's 8 less than 100. So they're all divisible by 4. If I divide 8 by 4, I'll get 2, and that's not a square number, so I'm guessing then, since this is supposed to be a perfect square trinomial, that all of these are divisible by 8. So let's find out. So 8 divided by 8 is 1. So 8 times x squared is 8x squared. 8 goes into 112. Well, it goes one time into the 11, leaves us with 32. So 14 times 8 is 112. And then 8 goes into 39. Oh, how many times? 4 times. Leaving us with 72. 72 divided by 8 is 9. And that's good news because we look at our first term inside the parentheses and it's square. We look at the second term, 49, or the last term, the constant, is 49, which is a square number, 7 times 7. And then we can look at the middle term, and that middle term should be 2 times the square root of the first term times the square root of the constant. Is that true? 2 times 7 is 14. The square root of x squared is x. So yes, I get 14x. So I know that's a perfect square trinomial, and I can factor it using the pattern we know. So this is going to be equal to 8 times the square root of the first term is x. The sign on the middle term is plus, it's positive, and then the square root of the final constant is 7. And I have to square that because it's a perfect square trinomial. So this factor times itself will give me x squared plus 14x plus 49, and I'm done. Here we go, 8 times x plus 7 squared. Excellent. All right, first thing we look for, always, greatest common factor. So the first term's 81, that's 9 times 9, or it's 3 to the 4th, so all of the factors of 81, the prime factors, are 3's. So I'm looking at these other terms, and I know 100 isn't divisible by 3, so there's no greatest common factor here. Now I'm going to look, is this a perfect square trinomial? 81x squared, if you take the square root of that, is 9x, so that's good. Square root of 100 is 10. So we're going to see if the middle term figures out. It should be 2 times the square root of 81x squared times the square root of 100. 10 times 2 is 20. Square root of 81x squared is 9x. 20 times 9x is 180x. So this follows the pattern, or we can follow the pattern to factor this. It is a perfect square trinomial. We do the square root of the first term, 9x. The sign of the middle term is positive in this case, and the square root of the last term. And I about pushed check, but remember, if I'm factoring completely, so far I only have one of the factors. The other one is the same thing, so I'm going to square this. Then I have that factor times itself. All right, we look for a greatest common factor. 7 is clearly it. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 14 divided by 7 is 2. And so we get 7. Then, what do we have? We have 1. We've got 7 times 1 plus 2x plus x squared. And so the square root of our first term, is 1. The sign of our middle term is positive, and the square root of our final term was just x, and then we're squaring that, so let's check that out, right? So it's 7 times 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times x plus another 1 times x is 2x, plus x times x is x squared, all times 7, and that'll bring us back to here. Okay? Excellent. We look for any common factors. Well, 25 is 5 times 5, and those 49 is not divisible by 5, so there's no greatest common factor here. The square root of our first term is 5. The sign of our middle term is positive. The square root of our final term is 7x. So, we should, if I can write, we should have this work out. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 7x is 35x. Plus 7x times 5 is another 35x. So 35 and 35 is 70x. Now, we do our last term, 7x times 7x is 49x squared, and we're good. So that was 5 plus 7x times itself. I can write that as a square, and we are done.